AVST live webinar. Today we'll be talking about our call center solution, TeamQ. Neil Butler will be presenting for us. And before we turn the presentation over to Neil, just want to let you know a couple of things. You can download the slides in the handouts area, which is over on the webinar panel, and you'll also see the question box there. We invite you to type in your questions at any time during the webinar, and then, of course, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and I'll give a reminder when it is time to submit questions as well if you don't get a chance to put those through during the session. And we are also recording this. We will make that available to you once we conclude here. Look for a follow-up email with the link to the recording. And one last thing, the email invitation for this webinar did also promise you a copy of our ROI white paper for the informal call center. And so we will make sure you get that in that follow-up email as well. So with that, I'll let Neil get us started.
Thank you, Ann. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. This is always a fun webinar for us to do. TeamQ is an interesting product. It's a little different than anything else out there in the market. It takes a little bit of explaining to make sure that people understand what it does. And then almost universally, people say, oh, yes, I see exactly how I can use that. It solves a problem that most enterprises have and are either ignoring or in search of a way to solve. So we're going to talk about how TeamQ can help that out. And when you talk about, why you came to these webinars, besides just, you got an email and somebody asked you to, guessing you get lots of those. We have a pretty good track record in this industry of having been here for a long time and focusing on specific communication solutions. So we were founded back in 1982, and actually that same product we started working on today is the product we're talking about, the CXE system. It's changed a lot over the years, obviously, and it's grown both in capacity and in the capabilities that it offers. And we've grown as a company as well. We have probably 20 million users out there or so. It's kind of hard for us to tell exactly. We don't license individual voicemail users, so it could be considerably higher than that. And we are recognized in the industry as providing best-of-breed UC applications in a number of categories. And we are definitely recognized as being the player in the market that can go anywhere, the broadest interoperability that anyone offers. And that's our design goal. We want you, regardless of what your infrastructure is today and where you might be going in the future, to be able to evaluate our solutions and take advantage of them without worrying about something changing in your environment that would make our product not work. We're not owned by a PBX company or a networking company, so it really is our goal to make sure that we can do everything for everybody. And if we look at some of the interoperability categories here, I'm not going to go through all these, just gives you an idea. But like I say, our goal is, particularly in this market where within an enterprise, things are really changing. I guess that's always been true in the enterprise, but the pace seems to be faster, and the scope seems to be greater. With the drive in the last 10 years to going to voice over IP, and the drive in the last couple of years that's still growing to partially or even fully migrate to the cloud. Any kind of purchase that you evaluate, there's a lot more to it now. You have to be very careful, not only that what you have today is going to work with this new solution, but if things change in your future, you really don't want to have to shop for another solution. So one of the things we always tell people is if you're looking at a unified communication solution, make sure that it has legs for you, that it can move forward as you do. We're actually pretty good at this because the architecture of our product from the very beginning has been a little different. We were founded by people in the data industry, not in the voice industry. So rather than that kind of monolithic silo of functionality, we really have a true three-tier application with a core engine and a set of connectivity pieces on the bottom and a set of applications on the top. So our ability to mix and match is really one of the things that lets us play in all sorts of solutions. And we've been in the voicemail business, the fax server business, the call center, kind of a modified call center that we're going to talk about today. We've done unified messaging. We have custom tools for custom solutions for business process access. So we really have a wide suite of products. And that's one of the reasons when we run these webinars that we kind of focus down on just one topic so that they don't take too long. And the topic today is TeamQ. So TeamQ is an interesting product in that for almost any product we have, we can give you a 1 or 2 word description of what it is. And we struggle with that with TeamQ because it's different, and there are no words that really connotate the O, where you'd say, oh yeah, we know what that is. So we start by talking about it's sort of an informal call center product. But it's not your normal call center. This isn't for process workers. If you have a room full of people that do the same thing, you push a call to them, they go out on a data terminal, look up some information, interact with the caller, take their next call as soon as they hang up, or maybe there's a wrap-up and then they take their next call. Those are process workers. They don't have any personal workflow. They take call after call after call. And the drive there is productivity and speed. And while we certainly can set up our system to do that, we offer something that goes a little bit beyond that. And because of the way we've structured it, ours has some very specific criteria. We are looking for small groups of people who don't just have process flow, but also have personal workflow. So think of the small groups you might have in your enterprise where they take calls as part of what they do, but they do other things, and they need the ability to switch back and forth and balance between those. And the only real way you can balance between them is know what's going on in that queue. And the way we're going to solve that problem is by creating a visual queue where the agents can actually see what's going on, and that's how they can make their decisions. Because it's visual, we've limited it down to 25 agents per queue. We found that a good number that a screen can handle and be very effective. Although you can have up to 50 separate teams, there's just something about the way we do it that really lends itself to a smaller informal work group. So what we're going to talk about mostly today is what's called pull model call management. You all know push model. That's a typical ACD queue. Somebody hangs up, they get the oldest call. That's kind of a tried and true paradigm for process groups that works fine. But we're going to use a pull model group instead. We're going to give the agent control of which call they get. We're going to let them manually, grab a call as opposed to have one thrust to them. And then we're going to give them things like screen pops and a lot of information along the way. Now we do have a supervisor interface and reports and things that on a bullet list on a side, I could make this look like a traditional call center application. And indeed, we've put it in that way because it's fairly inexpensive, so it fits in that. But it's not really meant for that. This is about agents controlling their own destiny. If you think about, and on most of the demos and things we're going to do here, we talk about an IT help desk. They're a really good group because they're that group of people that takes calls, but also goes out and visits desks and has research projects. They're not really a process kind of flow person, group. They have a lot more personal workflow, so they would be ideal for this. As we start looking about this, sending calls to groups of people, there's a lot of choices here, and that you notice this cost is sort of functionality and cost on the two axes. But hunt groups are pretty much something you have in your phone system, unless you have Skype for Business, and then you have response groups. But the same kind of thing, I can do like a round-robin distribution of calls, and that works for some kinds of groups. But the problem with that is, if you're in that group and you took a call and now you have to do something about that call, unless you log yourself out of that group, you're going to eventually pop another call maybe when you're not ready for it. For those people that do just take call after call, use contact centers, ACDs. Those are fantastic products. The Multimedia Contact Center has been developed over the years. They're extremely powerful, very full functionality, but you notice it's pretty high up on the cost structure as well. That kind of functionality doesn't come cheap, and that doesn't really do it for these informal groups, once again, that need something besides just taking call after call. So what we find with TeamQ is it sits right in the middle here. It's more expensive than a hunt group because you have to buy something extra, and a hunt group's kind of a standard feature. Less expensive by far than a contact center, and it's designed for that group that needs the flexibility. So if you think about how we do this, we look at the teams or the groups, and we're looking for people that handle multiple problems at once. They have multiple priorities. So it isn't just I'm going to take a call and then take the next call, and it also isn't that I work all day on projects. But it's I'm a member of this group, and maybe we're all managing a set of incoming numbers that we have to keep an eye on, and I might work all the time until I see a call that makes sense for me to take, and then I will take that call. Stop what I'm doing, take that call, and then go back to whatever I was doing afterwards. That kind of flexibility is what we need. So we deliver these features on the CX platform. The great thing about our platform, that architecture that we saw a shot of earlier, is this one platform does everything. You can buy every single feature we have, with the exception of some of the high availability features that require multiple servers, based on what they're accomplishing. But everything else can be deployed on a single platform. These are applications that we license and turn on the system. They all share the common resources, the same lines coming in from the phone system, the same administration client. All these things make it much easier to deploy and much less expensive. So if you look at what we're going to do here, keep in mind that some of you on these calls I know are actually already CXE customers. In your case, there's just some licensing we're going to talk about and turn it on. There's never an extra server required or extra connections. There might be extra ports, as we'll see, depending on how much of this you deploy. But it's very easy to deploy and manage this. And there's no specific kind of computer telephony link required to the phone system. That's one of the things that makes contact centers kind of important. They deliver a lot of functionality, but to do that, they also can rack up some pretty serious costs. And we're going to show you a way around that. The way we've done this is not to dedicate it to phones, so you don't have to have a special agent phone, but simply to make it a type of login. As an agent in a queue, when you're ready, you go to your Windows screen, you open the app, and basically you log in. And one of the things it asks you besides your credentials when you log in is, at what phone number can you currently be reached? Which means I can work here in the morning and take calls and monitor the sales engineering queue. I can go to lunch, go home, fire up my machine at home, log in, and instead of my desktop extension, put my mobile phone number in, or maybe the soft phone that I use when I'm at home. So the portability of agents is just inherent in the way we do the architecture. So that's something that appeals to a lot of people, because once again, these informal work groups, they don't tend to be people that sit in the same room all the time and do exactly the same job. So what we're going to do is we're going to let the agents control their destiny. And we're going to do this in kind of a very interesting and creative way. And once again, when we go through this next scenario, kind of showing you how it works, I think a lot of you will say, yeah, I see where this could be used. Some of you are going to say, well, no, that wouldn't be good for my call center because we're the more traditional push to call through people. So that's okay too. This isn't for everyone, but there's usually a group or two in any enterprise that can take advantage of this. So let's look at kind of what happens when we answer a call. And we're going to use that IT help desk as an example. So a call comes in, goes through your phone system, comes into CXE. We have it programmed to go into TeamQ to a specific group. We answer the phone. We play the opening announcement. Already, we're starting to be smart about this. We capture some information. We now get the caller's incoming ID number. So already we know a little bit about this caller. Now, sometimes that number is really, really helpful, but visually, if you have a lot of customers, you probably just don't know all those numbers. So we're going to gather it because we can turn it into more useful information. The next thing I'm going to do is interact with the caller by running a script. It's one of the great things about CX. It has a lot of extra capabilities it can draw on, and one of them is the ability to interact with the caller. So I can ask them questions. I can ask them up to 2 questions that get numeric input. What is your account number? What is your employee ID? What is your zip code? What is your contract number? Anything numeric, up to 2 of those questions. And I can ask them up to 2 multiple choice questions. What is your operating system? Which of our products do you have? Press 1 for this product, 2 for that product. I'm gathering this data now that I'm going to be able to use to deliver it to the agents to help them better make choices. So in this case, I'm going to ask them what operating system they're using. The caller presses 2. So they're calling into a help desk, and automatically now I know the only people that can really help this person are people with Linux skills. I could up front have a different menu that says, if you're calling for Linux, and then I could send them to one hunt group. But there's a lot more choices that can be handled by doing it with a menu in this method. So now I'm going to ask them some more things. I'm going to ask them for their account number. They're going to input that. I already know their operating system. I already know their phone number. Now I have this metadata some of which is already helpful. If I could just show, in my screen when I show the calls that this is a Linux support call, that's helpful. But there might be other things that we'd want to see, like who's calling in. It'd be nice to know who that actually is. And then other information about them, what kind of account they have, are they an active support customer? All these kind of things that could happen when you answer the call can now happen before the call and give the agent that information. So I've got kind of a setup here where I'm going to take that account number and I'm going to do what we call a data dip. A data dip is just a simple way that we use an existing API or web service or stored procedure call or something to reach into your enterprise database, whatever it is. I'm just showing Salesforce here because we have Salesforce and we did a couple of demos with it. And I'm going to push in that account number and bring back up to 4 different pieces of information. So I can bring back the account name, the product that they have, what kind of support plan they have, anything that would be helpful for these agents, I can pull right out and I can exchange that one bit of information for something much more useful. So now I've converted that metadata into really useful information. I still haven't finished dealing with the caller. I have some other options I can use here. This first one is I can actually look at the queue and tell them where they are. Your position in queue is number 2. The estimated wait time is 4 minutes. Now this is a feature that traditional call centers love. It's of a little less interest to us in this kind of call center because if I'm really doing a pull model based on that metadata, my call handling is not linear. I'm not going to answer the oldest call necessarily next. So this is at best, a good guess for how long it would be. So you can have this announcement in there or you can not have it in. It's just going to depend on how your queue is structured. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, how would you like to be handled? To hold for a representative, press 1. If they press 1, I'm now holding that caller on a port on the CX system, and I can play music to them and do all those, run them through various things. And that's on the screen and it's ready to be taken. If they press 2 to leave a message, then I can take a message in a specific mailbox that's being monitored by people in the queue. If they press 3 for a callback, I say your callback has been entered. Thank you for calling. We hang up. There's no connection to the caller now, but we have a callback number, and that call stays in the queue and ages just like the caller was on hold. And when the time comes, we make a call back to connect to that agent, as opposed to having them hold the whole time while they're waiting for an agent. So now I have this queue, and I have a couple of calls in queue already, and these are people looking for Windows support. This new call, which is the oldest or the newest call in the queue, looking for Linux support. And so that caller, in this case, they're waiting, so they're sitting there. So in a traditional world, the next agent would get caller number 1, the oldest call in the queue. But if all the agents don't have the skill set, the same skill set, that's not going to work too well. What if that particular person that's looking, to be the next available agent doesn't know anything about Linux? Or they aren't a network specialist, or they aren't an office application specialist, or whatever the other specialties might be in an IT group. So what I need is a way to not have that call go that way. So I'm not going to use push, I'm going to use pull. So in this case, my agents are looking at a screen. We'll see that screen in a minute. And I'm actually able to see each of those calls, what they need. What are the criteria for handling that call? And as an agent, I know my own call. So as the one Linux specialist, I am going to take that 3rd call, even though it's the newest call in the queue. Because if I take a Windows call and then somebody else takes the other Windows call, that person might have to wait until I get off that call because there's no one else. So depending on the balance of the skill sets, there's a lot of decisions that are just really easy to make because the pull method is visual. I'm giving them access to that data in a way that makes it completely clear which call they should be taking. So I go ahead and take that call, and now there's other calls in the queue. I finish up with my call. I look down to the queue. There's still one Linux call there, but I know that a couple of those other guys are also Linux specialists. I'm trying to get something done. That last call maybe requires some research and maybe even a desk visit for me to solve it. So I can actually walk away from the queue. I don't have to log in or log out because remember this is a pull model. If I don't pull a call, I don't get a call. And I can go do something else. When I'm done with that, I come back, one look at the screen, and I can see, oh, there's a Linux call in the queue. I can go ahead and take that one. So the visual nature lets the agents make the routing decisions. And that's, as hard as people have tried to come up with skills-based routing, algorithms that work flawlessly, this is by far the best one. So once I've done that, once I've called in and as a caller and I've given you the information and the system's done some data dips and brought back the information, I now have a screen. And on that screen I see every call, both being handled currently by an agent and waiting for an agent. And as an agent, I have a lot of choices here. So I'm looking at this screen, and I can see that there's 2 calls that haven't been handled, Karen and Martin. One is looking for network support, one is looking for Win 7 support. So if I'm that Linux guy, I might just keep doing whatever project I'm doing. I also notice that Tom's name, Agent Tom, is on 2 calls. Well, probably what happened is Bill called in, a few minutes ago, had a problem, and the Agent Tom said, reset your system and call me back. And of course, that never fixes it. So Bill called back. By then, Tom was on another call, and he looked down and saw that call from Bill come in, and he highlighted that call and hit the hold button, and now that will be his next call. He's reserved that call for him as his next call. So that's one of the things an agent can do besides just take a call. Next, if I was in charge of this queue and my SLAs ding me when a call's been on hold longer than a minute and a half, I might look down at that Martin call and say, oh, yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to get to that quick enough. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that one. And then I'm going to hit the redirect button and send it to the priority queue, perhaps. Or I might hit the message button and send it to voicemail. So there's ways that you can do things with calls besides actually just take them. So the ability to have these kind of decisions based on that data on the screen is really the strength of this application. So the architecture is really simple. I mean, I've got this screen that as long as I have a Windows app somewhere, and I can be running this from home, running it from my desk, running it from Starbucks on my laptop if I want. As long as I have that, I'm in and ready to go. And you notice there's just the normal telephones people use, the PBX and the CXE server. There's nothing extra required. But even with just those, without an expensive CTI link, there's some things I can do here. One of the things I can do is a screen pop. Now, screen pop's a desired feature in a lot of call centers, and the concept is when a call goes into queue and I know who's calling, and when I push that to an agent, I want to push a command to that agent's computer and open up some program to that relative record. I can save, a minute or 30 seconds for an agent saying, hi, yeah, what can I help you? Yeah, do you have your account number? Hold on, let me open up your account. I can make that all automatic. Now, we don't have a CTI link, which means when an agent pulls that call, we're not going to really know who it is at a system level. But the agent can highlight that call record and hit a button and generate a screen pop automatically. So that little bit on the bottom that says identification, that's just part of the programming for the queue, where I've said the identification field, if somebody right-clicks it, there'll be a link there that, that might say help desk. And then if they click on it, it's going to launch the program. In this case, this is just a phony web service that I launched to do a demo here. But it's going to push that information out, and what it's pushing, you notice, is customer ID. So the input number they did, and input, which was the whether they wanted Windows support or what else. And by having that, I can now push that into some third-party app. And basically, in this case, once again, I'm just using Salesforce. And now what you see is I've opened up Salesforce to that customer's record. So manual screen pops. Now, the reason that's important is we can do that on any program that has that capability by just putting that line of code in there. There's no expensive additional custom programming or anything else. Most programs that groups like this use have that sort of API available. And that's something that we can handle as part of the install with an assist to the dealer, or if we're doing it directly, it's a pretty painless thing. Now, once I have all this going on, of course, even though this may not be deployed as a regular ACD queue, people always want to measure things. So we give people a lot of ways to get information about what's going on. And here's one of the interesting ones, I think. Agents can not only have the call queue screen where they can see who's currently on a call, but they have the agent status screen. So they can see who's logged in and what they're doing. So if I'm getting ready to go for lunch, I might go to this screen and say, well, let me see. I've got 3 people on a call. I've got 2 people idle, though. That's good. Now, Carol is on a break, and Jose's in wrap-up, so he'll be back available in a few seconds. Yeah, now's a good time for me to go to lunch. But I might also look down and see that, everybody's on calls. There's really no extra resources, and it might not be the best time for me to go do that project or something else. So all kinds of information for the agents to be able to know what's going on in that queue. What should they be doing based on their evaluation of all the available information? We have lots of other logs for the supervisors that show what's going on in a call. They can just kind of look and see the health of an average queue. They can basically see what's going on in terms of minute by minute. Now, this is not really reporting information, although you can generate reports from it. This is really evaluation information for the supervisor. They might look at this and say, yeah, we're really busy. We're bringing calls in a lot quicker than before. I better get an IM and have a couple more agents log in, something along those lines. We do, of course, also have after-the-fact reports. Can't really have anything that handles calls without being able to tell you exactly what's going on. So we have these reports available, and they're basically all the same structure in that they show, like this is showing agent call activity, and you can see this first screen showing here is agent 2801, and here's all the call activity in the range of dates that I did. And it shows basically, what team they were logged into, they took a call, how much talk time, how much wrap-up time, all of that information there. And it'll be for all the agents that you ran it for. I just ran it for one for this screenshot. And then there'll be a summary screen at the end that will basically, there'll be an agent summary screen. So you can see this is I'm a really busy agent here. Basically, I was in wrap-up more time than I was more time than I was on a call. But that's a nice summary. And then that would be the report summary on the bottom would be the summary for the entire group of agents that you ran it on. And then we have the same thing for individual queues and everything else. So we have great information. All this information is generated using Microsoft SQL Report Writer, which means you can build your own custom reports if there's something else that you're trying to get. If you're trying to pull different pieces together on a single report, that's fairly easy to do. You can do it yourself if you have that knowledge, that skill set, or you can have us do it through a professional services engagement. So this is all about letting the agent know who's calling and why. This gets the data from the call, puts it on the screen, pulls up a CRM screen later to help them. But this is about skills-based routing that's a pull model. So this is agent-controlled, skills-based routing pull model. And like you say, like I said, we can't really get very, very good words to make it simple to understand what this does. So there's a couple of things you have to know about this. There's a couple of disciplines involved where it's a little different. In a traditional deployment where you're using a push model, when the agent hangs up, maybe they have a wrap-up timer, but either way, they get the next call automatically. So, and then when they hang up that call, they don't really have to do anything except wait for the next call. Ours is a little different because we don't have that CTI link. So when you take a call, you highlight a call and click go, basically, take call. Now we're starting our record saying, okay, he started that call now. And we're running a timer and keeping track of it. But when the agent hangs up their phone, we don't really know that. So the agent also has to hit the next call button that you see there. When I'm on a call, will actually turn to a hang up button. So the agent has to manually hang up the call in our application. So that's a change in discipline. And that's one of the reasons why people, when they say, oh, we're going to use yours now because it's so much less expensive, it only costs 10% of what it costs to renew our license for our call center. That's okay. We'd love to have that conversation. But keep in mind there's a discipline and a functional change here that you have to be comfortable with first. I love this, this last slide talking about all these concepts. It is simple to put on your system. It really is. It is simple to deploy. It is simple to use. What is a little more difficult is understanding where you're going to use it and how it's going to function within those groups. So just kind of to sum it up, here's just a standard system. Somebody calls in. We run a script. Welcome to the Dynacom Help Desk. The number you're calling from is such and such. To use this as your callback number, press 1. otherwise press 9. I don't have to do that. I don't have to tell them what the number was. I don't have to ask them to verify it. All these are optional parts of a script. But if I'm using callback, then I'm probably going to do this to make sure that the number I have is correct. If they hear this number and that's not really the number for their callback, then they can press 9 and we'll prompt them to enter a good callback number. Now I start asking them questions. Please enter your employee number. For support on Windows 7, press 1, Office, press 2, etc. So now I know who's calling from their employee number, although I need to do a little more work to get that right. I have to do that data dip so I can show it to an agent, and I know what they want. Based on that, I can go out, and maybe I'm going to tell them, you know, your position in queue and your time to hold is. But either way, I'm going to say to hold, press 1, leave a message, press 2, and to request a callback, press 3. So they make a choice, and now that call is on the screen. Now, if it's a callback, it's still on that screen. The only difference is if I select one that's a callback, that take call button changes automatically to a make call button. I click the make call button, a little screen comes up, shows me the number I'm going to call. I hit call. If they answer, then I start my call record. That's fine. If not, I can reschedule it. If it rang busy, then I can reschedule it. If it rang no answer, I can reschedule it with a longer time. If somebody answered and said, I don't know where you got this number, it's not the right number, then I can basically cancel that call as well. So all of that functionality is available. Now, there's another 20 minutes worth of features we could go into. Things like an agent can be logged into 2 queues at once. You notice this screen you're showing here for agent 2345. He's logged into both the help desk team and the orders team. So it's possible to mix things, which is handy in some of these smaller groups. When I go into a menu and push 1 for Windows, 2 for something else, the priority of the call, if I'm using push model, I can prioritize those responses and put them to the head of the queue. So there's all this information that makes it very tailorable. Now the simplest application could say, welcome to the help desk queue, you'll be handled by the next available agent. And then we'd use a push model and we'd just be a basic ACD. Or we can go as full-featured as you saw with all of that other information. The flexibility is what makes it a little hard to wrap around what this would do. But once you start thinking about your individual groups, that flexibility is also what's going to let us tailor this different for different groups. Every queue can be set up to run differently. At the beginning, Ann talked about the ROI. One of the things that we noticed, early on, is people are coming back to us and saying, "Well, I have 40 agents, and the time has come to renew those agents. Those agents are $1,500 a year, and so I've got this big, huge bill coming. I'm thinking maybe using your product." And then we're going to have the conversation about, well, let's make sure it fits, what you're doing. But indeed, if it does fit, then these are the kind of price differentials you're going to look at here, because we're not rolling out anything except licenses. Now, if you have 5 teams and they're each going to have 1 or 2 calls holding all the time, that's 10 additional ports you might have to add to your CX system. So I don't want to make light of the fact that there's a little work here to figure out how we deploy this, and some of that work might point to needing additional capacity. But still, compared to what you would pay for a larger call center, price will never be the reason you don't do this. Let's just leave it at that. And then, now I'm almost sure I did this presentation perfect this time, which means I can't believe there are any questions. But hopefully there are.
Actually, there are a couple. Just as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question and you haven't submitted, if you have your screen, if you're looking at full screen, use the orange arrow in the upper corner to expand your window, and you'll see the question box. And there's also a handouts area where you can grab a copy of the slides if you're interested. We will also send those out in the follow-up email along with the ROI paper that Neil just mentioned. Okay, so first question, can supervisors listen to the agent's calls?
No, and that's actually a good category in general. There are things we don't do that people might think of as standard, and one of them is there's no monitoring. There's no audio monitoring. Now, some of these things will be coming in an upcoming version, but for right now, no, the supervisor can't do that. Nor can the supervisor force people from queue to queue or do any of those things.
Okay, next, is there a limit to the number of queues an agent can log into at the same time?
If there is, I haven't come across it. I've had 10 queues open, or somebody log into 10 queues. So I suspect there's some sort of limit somewhere just having to do with the fields we're storing data in. But at 10 queues, probably the system's not really going to, probably not set up correctly. So let's just leave it at 10. And if you need more than that, then contact us offline and we'll talk about what it is you need.
And maybe the question is, how big of a monitor do your agents need to be able to see all the queues in that case, right?
Well, one of the reasons,
monitors.
Yeah, one of the reasons we limit this to 25 agents per queue is, if you think about, I have 25 agents and I have 10 of them online, so there's 10 lines in that screen we saw, and I have 1 or 2 calls holding, and I have 30 lines on that screen. We really don't want an app where you have to pull that screen up and down all the time. What's good about this for these small work groups is one quick look, you usually know exactly what it is you should do.
Okay, next, can you play options to the caller when in queue if it's been more than a certain time frame?
You can't play options, but you can say what you want to do. In other words, you can say the time, after X amount of minutes, well, first of all, after a certain amount of minutes, the lines on the queue are going to flash different colors, so the agents have some visibility for what's getting old. And then you can say, if I get to 4 minutes in the queue, what do I want to do? And you have the choices of sending them to voicemail, sending them to another queue, various things like that. But there is no get to a certain point and say, what would you like to do? Now, there's workarounds for that in our system where we can escape them out to a menu, and then we can build a priority queue, and they can queue back into the priority queue, which will show those calls as ahead of the others. So there are some kind of crude ways to get that functionality, but it's not a standard feature.
Okay, next, there are a couple of reporting questions. So is reporting available, and then what about custom reporting?
So yes, those reports I showed, I think there were 13. That's all a standard part of the system. When you build an account for somebody, you say whether or not they can access those reports, and then they can be run real time without any problem at all. They're done in Microsoft SQL Reporter, which means anybody can download Microsoft SQL Reporter and modify those reports if you want, although we suggest you don't modify the standard ones. But you could build custom reports with that. Now, not everybody would have the resources in their IT department to build those, so we build custom reports as a professional services engagement if that's what it takes.
Okay, another question. What if an agent is a mobile worker? Does it support home-based agents with cell phones?
Yes, as long as an agent has a number at which we can call them and a Microsoft Windows operating system that they can run the client on, we're set to go.
Okay, next question, and this, I don't know, we may want to take this one offline, but how can I find out what are the limitations of the app? You've mentioned a couple already.
Yeah, I think we'd have to take it online to find out exactly what they're worried about.
Okay. Next, does AVST provide services when the client doesn't have that resource for the application setup?
Yeah, so we do a bunch of things with this one because it's a little unusual. So we have an assisted install that's one of the part numbers that the vendor can actually put on there to make sure that while we could go out on site, mostly we do these remotely because it's pretty easy for us to do it that way. And then we have professional services. Those data dips I talked about, there's a standard part number in the book for those, and it's very, very low. Writing maybe a custom piece of middleware to do a screen pop for you. Yes, we do all that on professional services engagements.
Okay. What about using it on a Mac?
Nope, we have no way to do that right now, and I have to be really honest, you're unlikely to see that. We haven't written any Mac clients for years and years. While Mac is popular in certain areas, within the enterprise, the normal world of business, there's just not enough density out there to cover our costs for keeping a second stream of application development going. So I don't think you'll ever see anything on a Mac for it.
Okay. Let's see, it looks like one more question just popped in here. So only one agent per PC. Can you have multiple agents sharing a PC?
Sure. When they log in, Basically, the credentials windows come up and you log in as whatever agent you are. You put in your agent ID, you put in your password, you put in the telephone number you want to use during this session, and that's who you are. When that screen comes up, it will be that agent.
Okay, thanks, Neil. It looks like that wraps up the questions. If anyone is still typing, we'll take that one offline and we'll do a follow-up with you once we conclude here. Just want to thank everyone for joining, and just one more quick reminder, look for a follow-up email from us later today with the slides, the recording, as well as the white paper that we mentioned. And of course, we'll hopefully look forward to seeing all of you on another AVST webinar in the future. And I'll go ahead and let Neil give his goodbye as well.
Thank you, Ann. Yeah, we do appreciate that you come to these. We know it's hard to carve time out of your day. Hopefully you get some things of value, and if not, let us know. Or let us know if there's some other subject you'd like us to cover, because this is one of the easiest ways for us to get information out about the CXE product. It's a very broad product, and no one's going to come to a webinar where we tell you all about it, because it's like 3 or 4 hours probably to do that. So these little quick shots, and this one's gone longer than most, unfortunately, that's how we do it. So let us know what other kind of information you might find helpful. And thank you, everyone.
All right, have a great day, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.